Find them on there okay?
Yep, no problem.
Okay. Otherwise I've got a backup laptop just in case.
No, they're here.
So we're doing the presentations first?
Yes.
Okay.
I better check what time. Don't want exit up. Close.
Mine's very simple. I'm going to mainly talk.
So we're live.
Yep. Oh, okay.
Did you manage to connect
I didn't get the password.
Okay, good.
Yep.
So your AGM presentation is on the desktop.
All right. Okay. So how do I get the notes to come up?
You just start it and then swap. This. Put this back in.
Yeah. Okay. So but the notes, so it appears the notes have come up.
View. Notes page. Notes page.
When it's running. I can ask the guy. How do you do it so it extends to there?
Unfortunately, we can't do it with an extended desktop mode.
Oh, okay. All right.
We're pretty much limited to just having the.
All right. Just somebody else. Couldn't make it. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't get the notes up.
Yeah.
But when you're ready, just push that button.
Okay. Yep.
Ooh. Don't do that.
Yeah, I'll just self-introduce.
Okay, fantastic. I'll go look for that. The other question is, when are you going to start?
I'm going to start as soon as I can find the presentation.
Good, no pressure.
Oh, I just can't find the Tatiana sent the presentation. I can't find it. Just to look on it.
Where did she send?
No, she sent it to it's somewhere in the thing, and it's this thing here. So DDSG.
Which, to right next to
Got
her?
it. I've got it.
I've got it. So that was my presents.
Yep. Okay.
Do you want me to bother this one?
No. Oh. Okay, everybody, I think we're almost there. Who knows how to get notes up on an iPad? So what's happening at the moment is I'm trying to, unfortunately Tatiana can't be here to talk about the data governance SIG, so I'm trying to go through her presentation. So I'm sending, well, so I'm trying to find the notes, okay? Could you find the notes? Anyway, welcome to the DAMA Australia AGM. For those who don't know me, I'm Andrew Smales. I'm the current president of DAMA Australia, and I've been for the last 12 months. So it was about October last year, I think there was a meeting in Sydney. So this is the first time an AGM for DAMA Australia has been held outside Sydney, and basically it's because up till now Sydney has had by far the biggest number of members in one location. But now it's sort of getting to the point where all locations are beginning to boom and the numbers are going up, and we're getting close to Sydney. So what was the quorum last year? It was about 30.
It was about 40. Yeah.
It was about 40.
So we're up at 52 or 53 now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is one of the challenges we have, DAMA. The Constitution is really written like a knitting club in one city. So it's really based on the fact that you can have a meeting, everybody's there, and everybody votes, and maybe there's one or two proxies and things. But because we're now quite geographically spread around Australia, it's becoming a bit of a logistical exercise getting all the boxes together. So as I'll talk about briefly in the President's report when we get to the AGM, so one of the challenges going forward is trying to change the Constitution to actually be much more manageable and less effort, and to get the same result of people voting for the office holders. So this is a presentation which Tatiana put up, but apparently unfortunately she can't be here today. So the Data Governance SIG, I think most people have heard of it by now, have they? So it was really started off last year, it was about 2 years ago, a January meeting of DAMA Canberra, and when you asked people what they wanted something happen around data governance. So I went to National Archives and said, I think it's a good idea, since you're responsible for data governance, that we form this SIG. So it's met about 4 times last year. And so we're just going to run through the sort of, I think that's what the presentation's about, what we've actually done. So, was it a day there? So the first meeting was back in February, where it talked about data catalogues. So the government has said that every agency should have a data catalogue, and it's a good idea. So we got together and talked about it. So there was 3 of us talked. I talked from a DAMA perspective, and so I talked to Peter Aitken in the States, and they basically said that data catalogues, they were a bit passé now, but they realised there was other things to worry about. But anyway, so and then so the Department of Agriculture then talked about their was it agriculture? Yeah, it was agriculture, about their data governance project, and they put a lot of effort into it. They had developed a sort of SharePoint site, and it looked very snazzy, and put a lot of thought into it. And then the Geoscience Australia talked about their catalogue. So it's sort of an interesting insight, 3 different perspectives. So the Geoscience was probably the most mature one, and agriculture was, quite recently put a lot of effort into it. So there was a good discussion that day. And then in May, we organised a webinar with Peter Aitken and Todd Heather, who is the CDO for the Justice Department Federal Courts in the States, and somebody else, I've forgotten their name. But anyway, so they were talking about, what was the experience of sort of data management, data governance in the US government. That's it, Gary Yakimov. Anyway, so that was a good sort of webinar. It was a good discussion. It was sort of an early morning sort of thing at 8 o'clock at the dialogue down the road. And so I think Peter was quite it's very, good if you want to talk to him about data management or to come out here. So he's coming out to do his workshop and things like this. So I think next year we'll try and get him to talk a bit more about the sort of data governance issues in thing. Okay, thank you.
Don't think it's going to help because it's about 9 point.
That's okay. So he was what Peter talked about was treating the role as a sort of political and social sort of thing. So their advice for a new CDO was to do nothing for 18 months and just go around, talk to people, sort out the politics and the social and where people are, and actually just trying to promote others, really, to take a lead sort of role, and the strategy is really about trying to build the confidence of business to get involved, and to understand what their needs are, and to, at some point try and set up a governance board of like-minded people to provide the governance over the data. So then there was a meeting then in what was it? In August. So InfoGov ANZ is not an association. It's sort of 2 women who're passionate about information governance who've got together to form a group to lobby people. So they decided that forming an association would get in the way. And so they organised these meetings. So I've been to 2 of their events. So the first one was at the meeting room of the lawyers, where we talked about the skills framework. The Archives, National Archives put out a skills framework, and what does that mean in terms of skills, so information management skills framework. So it covered everything from records management, to data management, and it was really about, well, you know, what was good about it, where can you go from here, and what should we do? So one of the questions was, you know, do you let each individual get CDMP and go for certification, or should you do it as an agency and say, you know, as a government sort of level, and say everybody must get certification? So there was a sort of interesting discussion there around that. So then October, there was a talk from Heather Riley, the National Data Commissioner. So they are, so what does she do? So they're developing around data sharing and developing an interoperability maturity model. So, so around the legislation around the release of data, which they're developing in the National, the Data Commissioner's Office. So to talk about that, so they're very focused on getting this legislation out, you know, rather than talking about skills or something that we might be particularly interested in. So it's around the governance arrangements, trying to develop those governance arrangements around sharing. So they've actually sent out a paper just today to try and get people to comment on. So I can forward that if people want. And so how data sharing and the advisory council, you know, and doing accredited agencies and trusted users and all that sort of framework, how to get the data sharing framework up and going. Oh, my 6 up. Okay. So there was one other meeting I went to with InfoGov ANZ, which was last month, which was interesting because it was about really, what was it? I've forgotten. But it was National Archives were there talking about information governance and the idea around big data and that and information sharing. And so there was people from a range of different agencies and vendors and things like that. So I suppose at the end of the day, I think this information governance thing is very important to all of us. And I think with a bit more encouragement, a bit more involvement, I think we can build up quite a good community here in Canberra. So Andy, do you want to briefly do yours?
I should mention on from the data governance SIG meetings, it's very interesting to see that the level of engagement from government departments, they all seem to think it's their job to be there, which is a very good place to be. And you know, the members of the SIG seem to take ownership of their SIG. They're there because they want to, and they want to drive it along, and they've got their own agendas, which is really good for a SIG. It means we don't have to push, you know, nobody has to push it. It's sort of starting to push itself quite well. Okay, let's see if I can find mine. And mine's a simple one, not as elaborate as Tatiana's. You can admire the background I took from my drone a couple of months ago. It took me ages to find a nice beach. I had this vision like the Microsoft on my iPad. It had one of these, and I thought I'd like to have a background, something like that. So I took that a couple of months ago. Okay. Oh, sorry. Let me stand behind here. So the data modelling SIG's been a bit of a mixed bag for the past year. We've had a combination of physical meetings, and most recently we've been doing webinars. And part of that is because we've been holding the meetings at IP Australia, and they've just they're part of the way through a big refurbishment of the building, so we lost all our meeting rooms. So we really had to switch to webinar format, and we're hoping to get some rooms back in January as we're starting to get floors given back to us by the builders. We were lucky this year to have Irwin to come on board as a national sponsor of the SIG, and that's given us the ability to actually go to a webinar format in the interim. Irwin are allowing us to use their webinar capability, and they've also been providing a range of good speakers for us to talk, and it's been a really good stopgap measure when we couldn't have physical meetings. It's also, we've got the combination of wanting to hold the SIG at a national level, but at the same time we still see there's benefit in chapters having their own local versions where people get together and can discuss things informally. But maybe DAMA may be able to come up with some webinar infrastructure support, and we can do this on an ongoing basis. So I think the next slide. So we didn't know how to start this, what people were interested. So the first meetings were all about finding what people were interested in, what assistance did they need. We had a vision of people bringing problems perhaps to the SIG to find out what they wanted help with. In the end, it seemed to be a case of people wanted to gain some understanding perhaps about things that were coming up that they wanted to know about, terms they'd heard that they wanted to discuss, and we often made them sort of a round table discussion about issues. So the sort of issues we talked about were data modelling from conceptual, logical, physical, because people had often had experience of some parts but not others. And some people who had experience with data models were able to see that an information model is really just a type of data model. And the same principles that apply to data models can apply to information models, certainly at the conceptual levels. We talked about star schemas and third normal form and what the differences were, and what we saw sometimes with people tend to be pigeonholed as doing third normal form, and they really didn't have much of a knowledge of star schemas, so we were able to talk a bit about that. We also got onto data vaults and what a data vault is. We also touched on master data management and experiences that we'd had at IP Australia using creating a customer data hub using the Informatica Cyperion master data management solution. And people also identified some other subjects that were really on the books that they want to talk about tips and tricks for data modelling, things that good data modelers know. And when I say data modelers, I'm talking about everyone, all the activities up to the design of data and including the design of databases. So we thought about having a session to try and pass experiences on about what can you do to make database design a robust process so that you're not forever going to have to change your database. So, putting audit, as an example of that, is putting audit columns on tables so you knew who created the column, who created the table, or the row, and when it was last updated, and things like that. We talked about running a data modelling workshop, because often data modelers have to try and get data out, and it could be good for people to have a better understanding about how you draw information out of people to make their data models more robust. I mean, I have a principle of never trusting an application developer, and you've got to work out where they don't know what they think they know. And so data modelling helps you confirm terminology and things like that. And I think that can be a valuable skill for people to be able to draw on businesses' knowledge and confirm when they use somebody who used the word customer and somebody else who used client. Well, are they the same thing, or is there some sort of nuance between that terminology? Also, Agile data modelling. Everybody smiles when you talk about Agile development because it provides such a massive problem for us in data modelling and database design, I've found. So I think we're going to need a session and a few bottles of wine to discuss data modelling in an Agile environment. And also data modelling tools. There was quite a bit of interest in the pros and cons of different data modelling tools, and as you've probably heard by Irwin coming on board as a sponsor, Irwin has re-entered the market. We thought they were dead and buried, but they're back, and they've got a story to tell. So we want to find out what the difference between data modelling tools are. And so they're just some of the things we had. I don't think that was probably my last slide. So next year, hopefully we can restart the physical get-together meetings again, and hopefully we can also continue the webinar format, because I think that might be the way of the future. It's often hard for people to get to one place for a given meeting, and I think maybe webinars are a way to go. So it'd be good if we could get some sort of some technology in place to help that. So thank you.
Okay, so now the whole exciting bit. We've all been waiting for the AGM. So I'll just go through briefly the agenda. So we'll just confirm the minutes of the last meeting in Sydney, and then we'll go through the reports down to the President, the Treasurer, the membership report, and then we go to the elections. So I won't read it. You could probably easily read it on the screen. So the minutes of the last AGM. So they had awards for Ignite night, which is something which you could think about here. So they have this 5-minute speech, where it's a sort of competition. You have 5 minutes to do a talk, which is set, and the slides. I forgot how many slides turn as you go. Anyway, it's a very popular thing in Sydney. So David Wee was the president for previous year. Terry Smith was the treasurer. Mark Aitken presented the membership numbers, and then we elected the thing. So quite easy sort of highlights there for the AGM minutes. Here's the more detailed ones, which so again about the reports, the growth in membership. So it was growing quite a bit. So we'll hear more about that later. The president's report from David. And then the meeting sort of ended. So, people who were there, can we move to accept the minutes?
I think Matthew and myself.
I don't know, I think whatever you say.
I was there and I can confirm.
Thank you.
I support it with
Okay. So this was the committee meeting, the committee for DAMA Australia Committee for last year. So the main difference last year was that beforehand we had the ordinary members were elected at the AGM, but last year we decided that the members, we should put the chapter presidents on the DAMA Australia Committee and just have 4 standing positions. So that's the sort of makeup of what it was, and I think during the year that worked well. So getting sort of talking to each of the chapter presidents at the meeting, we got very good input. So here's my report. So you can see that. Let me just have a look because somebody. So Sydney, okay. So you can see the number of meetings, the conferences, and the member meetings. So other sort of meetings around webinars and things like that. So as you see in Canberra, we had 11 meetings. There were 6 conferences here. Last year, 6 conferences. We had 5 webinars at the total. So there was about 53 events held. 35 last year and then 53 this year. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm not reading this quite right. So it's quite a bit of activity, quite a big increase in activity across the states and things like that. And so it's good to see Perth and Parramatta and Adelaide all starting to have more meetings. Wrong way. So do I hand over?
So right now, the way the finances work, we have the 4 main cities, Canberra, Melbourne, Perth, and Sydney all each have their own bank account, which then runs events within each city. So this is just looking at the total summary dollars across each of the cities over the last 3 years, 16, 17, 18. So you can see the big increase from 17 to 18 because our membership really grew fairly well over this past year, which is very good. Revenue and expenses for the 2 years, that's total revenue and total expenses. I have detailed breakdowns of anything that you might want to see in the financial report that does, what those expenses are made up of and by each city. To give you an idea of what that is, basically our membership, DAMA meetings, sponsorship, training, conferences, interests, our revenue is pretty much generated mostly from our membership. And secondly, from our sponsorships. Last year we had MIP as a sponsor, as well as ASG and Irwin. Yes, that was what it was. Thank you. So then we have our expenses, DAMA meetings, conferences, training, and our general operating expenses. Our operating expenses in 2018 look lower than normal. That's because the admin wasn't paid until actually July 2018, which is in the next financial year. So this is all as of June 2018. So we were working at a net surplus of 22. Typically, overall, across all cities, we kind of end up at a deficit, small deficit, but, and actually, if we take into account the admin, we would be at a deficit of $2,180 for that financial year, 2018. So that's pretty much it. If anyone wants to see any of the details of what any of those categories, make up, come see me. Got tons and tons of, detail. Quick enough? Is everybody okay?
For those of you who don't know me, Mark Atkins, I'm currently the Secretary of DAMA Australia. I was elected last year. Prior to that, I was involved in looking after membership, because nobody seems to want to look after the membership. It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. So just a couple of highlights here. It's actually been a very, very challenging year. And as you saw from the number of events that we've had, we're struggling a little bit to get the smaller chapters up and running. So Adelaide, Perth has certainly been reinvigorated this year. And Parramatta is a brand new extension of Sydney. So what we find is you really need to get those events going to draw the members in and build the membership. So we've been very successful in Canberra and Melbourne this year, have grown significantly. Sydney has always been fairly stable, but we've also experienced some growth there. So all in all, we've also seen a lot of activity on the members area. So we're finding now, we used to get a lot of members not paid up, and you used to get the benefits of DAMA by getting those discount codes and so on. So we set up the members area, and if you haven't as yet logged in and got yourself access, we hope to build that up a little bit in the future as well, to put some more member capabilities in that area. But that's drawn a lot. So we're up from 98 this time last year. We now have 237 of our members who have registered for access to the online. And we certainly see some peaks every time we send a mail out for a conference or training event that offers the discounts. So we've got a kind of a win-win here, where we offer the discounts, we bait them into the members area to get the discounts. That encourages membership, and I think that's part of the membership growth. But I have to say that Canberra has done a fantastic job of canvassing for membership this year, and Melbourne as well. We've seen some really good activities in Melbourne. So just to summarise where we're at, we've got I've put 2016, 17 and 18 figures in here so you can see the growth. So we've gone from corporates, 44 members last year, to 64 members this year, which is actually a very significant growth for us, because the corporates are one of the hardest members to manage. We've got to deal with their accounts payable departments, and there's a lot of activity there for Terry. Thank you, Terry. I'll have to say thank you for that. Individual members have grown from 123 to 167. The other thing that I will point out here is we do notice trends in the industry. So typically we see, when the industry is doing well, we see a lot of corporate membership and a lower individual membership, because the individuals tend to start taking advantage of their corporate membership. And I think this is one of those good boom years. I think data is certainly an exciting thing right now. So we're seeing the corporates growing and the individuals growing still, but to a lesser degree. Here's a little bar chart. I didn't do a pie chart because we all know that pie charts are evil. That's a little Sydney joke. But you can see that we're doing well. Canberra, has gone leaps and bounds over the last 3 years, which is why we've managed to get the AGM here. And this is the corporate members. So all in all, you can see the growth on the far right-hand side there. The blue is 2016, the orange is 2017, and the grey is this end June. And we have grown since June as well. And here again, you can see that same improvement on the individuals. So I'm really happy from a secretary point of view, looking after the members. And here's just a quick, you won't be able to see the numbers on there, but it shows you this continuing trend of online sign-up accumulation since we launched the members area back in February 2017. So that's over the 79 weeks to the end of June of this year. So I'm going to hand back to Andrew to give the last few bits of the President's report. And thank you for your assistance and communication with me over the year. And I hope to serve you again in the coming year. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So just quickly, going through the highlights from this year, we got 2 sponsors for going forward for DAMA Australia. So this is at the sort of national level of sponsorship. So Irwin sponsored the data modelling SIG, and they organised the webinar things for that. And Robertson Ryan is going to sponsor a newsletter. So hopefully, I don't know if it's next month or it's going to be in February, we'll have a monthly newsletter. So it'll be much more richer sort of information sharing sort of a platform for members. So the growth in subscribers for the email list is now above 16,000, which is pretty good. I noticed with the webinars that about half the people, maybe a third or half the people, are non-members, and they religiously say that. So it's quite interesting. So we have to do something about that to encourage the online membership a bit more to people to become members. So there's a lot. 38 meetings were held around Australia, and it's about 100 people, 800 people, I reckon, who have attended one or more meetings. So it's quite a good indicator that we're out there. We held 10 webinars. So this year we developed these sort of banners, the marketing materials and the flyers you might have seen, to try and get a consistent look and feel, because up till then not every every chapter had a banner, and like in Canberra we were just religiously creating our own flyers. So we're trying to get this sort of corporate membership view. We had sponsorship from Irwin and ASG in Canberra, and MIP sponsored this year. So sponsorship, the interest is there. People wanting to sponsor, they're just not sort of falling over themselves just yet. But anyway, so one of the things this year we started charging $500 for the use of the email list for training. This means that we probably sponsored about 15 training courses, something like that. So there's a good income stream for DAMA Australia in sponsoring training, and there's more training providers appearing, in Data Manager, which is a good thing. So the more that appear, the better. And there was about 20 odd conferences advertised on just this year on the website. So the number of conferences is increasing. So going forward, really, the priorities for next year is really sorting out the relationship with DAMA International around the chapters. What is a chapter? How do we relate to the DAMA International chapters and sort of international things? So DAMA itself internationally is going through a bit of change. They have a new committee, and they're trying to encourage nations like Russia and Saudi Arabia to start up chapters and things like that. So they're sort of talking to us about how we sort of coordinate things. And at the same time, we're trying to work out, well, how do we, organise ourselves and do it going forward? So we've got to look at the constitution. We have to look at the sort of operating model around how the chapters operate. There's no real sort of ground rules at the moment around, what happens to income and who gets income, and if Canberra gets all the corporate sponsorship, what happens to poor Brisbane? The sponsors turn up. So there's things like that. And we'd like to get a national approach to sponsorship and encourage that. So for for DAMA chapters, what we'd like to do is get some more income to actually start, getting more speakers out to Adelaide and Perth and the sort of the starting ones. Do more webinars and maybe try some sort of virtual meetings like tonight on a webinar, sort of live. And I think the important thing that DAMA International is going to relaunch CDMP next year. They've sort of taken it down to really upgrade it to DMBOK 2, version 2, so it was version 1, and also to try and make it a bit easier for people to do it. So it's now going to be an open book exam. So if you can answer 100 questions in an hour and a half, never having opened DMBOK before and read it, good luck to you. But I think that'll encourage more people to take the exam than it has in the past. So now it's time to vote. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Simon Wall.
Okay, so the important thing, first of all, I'm going to declare the committee positions vacant. Thank you to the current occupants, Andrew and David and Terry and Mark. Thank you very much. We have, hang on, what did I push? No, go. There we go. We have 4 committee positions to fill. We've received nominations for those 4 positions. I will go through the positions one at a time and call for additional nominations. You can nominate. But if there are no additional nominations, then we can declare the positions filled. So, for President, we have received a nomination from Andrew Smales. Are there any other nominations? No. Okay, good. Great. Andrew, congratulations, you are President. Okay, so 1 nomination received for Vice President from David Weeb, who's not here this evening. Any other nominations for the Vice President? Okay, great. Congratulations, David. I'm sure he's very thrilled. Treasurer, we have received 1 nomination from Terry Smith. Any other nominations for Treasurer? Fantastic. Terry, congratulations, you're it again. And for Secretary, 1 nomination from Mark Atkins. Anybody else interested in being Secretary? No? Congratulations, Mark. Thank you. So that's the 4 committee positions, the 4 mandatory positions filled. Now, I need guidance. There are 7 ordinary positions on the committee.
So we
Yeah.
just need to vote to agree that the 7 positions,
Mm.
which the overall committee have recommended the presidents of the cities
Mhm.
fill those positions.
Okay. So I guess I'm asking, are there additional nominations for that? Anybody else want to be on the committee? Excellent. Okay, so
That's just a formality for us, so that's those members of, and I think we can second that.
yep. Okay, so you consider yourself duly appointed to the committee. But do we need a vote to accept the other set, the 7?
If there's no contest, then I think it's up to this deal to do a vote.
Okay.
Accept the 7.
Does the meeting accept the 7 city presidents as members of the committee? I think anybody opposed to that idea? No. Fantastic. There we are. Unanimous. All right. And I think I'm done. There we go.
And the chair back to you.
Andrew, welcome up, Mr. President. Congratulations.
So I'll be very brief. I think I've said it all about what this year around what we sort of need to focus on is just trying to sort out that operating framework, and really I think the main issue for DAMA is now, as you see, the membership is growing and is outgrown the model of a volunteer-only sort of organisation. So back in August, I got invited by association specialists who look after a lot of large associations, the AMA, the vets, and a whole range of industry type associations. They flew me to Melbourne and I talked about data. I don't think they were as interested in data as were social media, but anyway. But it occurred to me that here we are, we're the Data Managers Association. Everybody talks about us being the key to the economy and the future and everything else. If the AMA has 50 employees and some of these other smaller ones have 3 employees and they all have a social media manager, why don't we? So I think it's time to sort of upgrade our ambition, I think, to actually be more like a professional association and have staff and skills to call upon rather than just relying on volunteers all the time. So that's really where I think we need to start going and thinking about. So part of that is money and sponsorship. I think we need to get advice on how to do that, really, and get the income and then be able to sort of be involved in some sort of professional association management. Okay, well, thank you very much. And one more, Mark.
I'll keep this really brief, but I wanted to say thank you to all our members. I know we've got some people on YouTube there, so hello and thank you for joining us. If you've been able to communicate with Simon through the email, if you haven't, please do so if you've got anything you need to raise. But I want to say a really big thank you to all our members, because it's the members that keep this organisation going. And it's the commitment of the people that have made this happen. We've got a great team. So Andrew, I want to say thank you to you, to David Weeb, to Terry Smith. I want a big thank you to Francesca, who in our back office does a tremendous job. She does the registrations for the Sydney meetings. She's always there. She's done a great deal of work on the DAMA branding and so on. So I want a big thank you to Francesca for the last year, and I look forward to and thank you for voting me in again for this year. I may actually step down at the end of this year through personal reasons, but I'm happy to continue for this particular year. And please, any questions you have, please send them to me. And enjoy the rest of the evening. I think we've got some food, canapes and drinks, so have a fantastic time. Thank you.
You've probably got to officially declare the meeting over.
Okay, we can officially declare the meeting over. Okay, thanks a lot.
Now, when